Here it is, the third video in my series about the Usana region. This video will be structured a little differently because I'm not only covering routes 2 and 3, but there will be an introduction to Professor Cherry and the first gym leader in the Usana region. So as normal, I'll start off with a little animation, but I will also be adding an animation at the end of the video as well. I've put a lot of work in on this one, so I hope you guys like it. These are the returning Pokemon that you can expect to find on routes 2 and 3. We've got Grubbin for route 2 as well as Skitty, and for route 3 you can find Corphish and Yanma as well as Tailo. For one reason or another, they fill an important evolutionary niche in the Usana early routes. Now let's get into today's video and Pokemon. The first Evo line in today's video is a Pokemon that was originally created for Gen 2, but for whatever reason Game Freak didn't add it into the final game. I hinted at what Pokemon this could be in my 100 subscriber special where I revisited the Change One Letter challenge, so if you haven't seen that video, you should definitely check it out. After this one, of course. But if you've already seen it, let's see if you were able to guess correctly. It's Renrin. So when I decided to do this region, I knew I wanted to bring in at least one cut Pokemon, and since I already had an idea of what I wanted my first gym leader to be, I decided Renrin would be the perfect Pokemon to bring into the Usana region. This is Kittle, the Bellcat Pokemon. So when the Pokemon Company first came up with the concept of this Pokemon, it was known as Renrin and was female only and dark type. I decided to change the name to Kittle because it was a more modernized name to go with my more modernized design. Kittle is a combination of kitten and bell. I also decided to change the typing from dark type to normal type, and you'll see why by the end of the video. So when it came to redesigning Renrin, I didn't want to go too far from Game Freak's original design. I personally love tuxedo cats, and I'm a big believer that we always need more cat Pokemon. So I kept the same pose for the most part and simply modernized aspects like the eyes and tail. But overall, I just went with making it in my art style. When it came to the shiny, I thought about gray cats and decided to go with a steely blue-gray. For the stats, I went with a decent HP, defense, and special defense, but an overall decent base stat total for an early game Pokemon. For the abilities, I decided to go with Hustle and Runaway, and the hidden ability is Limber. I obviously went with a theme for the abilities, thinking what would work best with cats, and Limber is already a cat ability, so it works great. Kittle will be found on urban routes as it's a bit of a cross between an alley cat and a house cat. Kittle are mildly mischievous in nature, but due to the bells giving them away, they are often caught in the act. Most trainers agree that you must be patient with Kittle and let them come to you. I think Kittle is super cute and would make a great addition to cat Pokemon, and it's really unfortunate that Renrin got cut out in the first place. Of course, deciding to redesign a cut Pokemon is going to be an intimidating task, and I'll be honest, I probably picked one of the easier ones to do. But as you might know, Renrin was supposed to evolve like other cat Pokemon, and so of course Kittle will evolve as well. Let's check out the next evolution. This is Cattering. The name is a combination of cat and the sound that a bell makes. To evolve Kittle into Cattering, you have to level it up while knowing Iron Defense, a move Kittle learns at level 26. So when looking at Renrin's Evo, I didn't have much to go on. I could tell it was supposed to be a black cat with a different kind of bell tail, and it had a golden hair tuft. But beyond that, the features were really hard to discern. Pokemon has come a long way since Gen 2 sprites, and since Game Freak's own art style has evolved over time, I wanted to do the same for this Evo line. I changed the pose, allowing for a better view of Cattering's design. I took the elements I could from the original design, so the head, body, tail, and hair tuft are as close to the original as possible, while giving them a more modern design. For the ankle cuffs, since it wasn't completely clear what they were in the original design, I took a little bit of creative liberty and made them look kinda like bangles, a type of bracelet. The shiny follows the same color palette as Kittle. For the abilities, I kept them mostly the same, but replaced Runaway with light metal. Steel types are known for being very heavy, and since I wanted Cattering to feel like an obtainable house cat, I thought halving its weight would make it feel more manageable. For the stats, Cattering is defensive, HP, and special defensive oriented, with a decent attack. Though people will take Cattering in as a member of their home, it's worthy of noting that when they jump down from high places, they can damage the furniture they land on due to their weight. This was partially inspired by a really funny story about the time my large orange tabby cat jumped from a top shelf onto a small wooden table and it broke in half. You can easily tell when Cattering are agitated as the rhythmic twitching of their tail produces a steady ringing sound. The next Pokemon I made for Route 2 is also going to be quite familiar. This is Aini, the hearing Pokemon. The name Aini is a combination of audio and mini. Since I decided to make the Usana region as my first fan-made region, I knew I wanted to have a connection to the other region based on the US. When I was playing Pokemon Black and caught my first Audino, I had no idea how much I would come to depend on it. I ended up naming my Audino Big Mama, and anytime I started to struggle, I could switch her in. And not only could she take most hits, but I found at least my Audino's Double Slap was straight broken. Nothing could withstand Big Mama's slapdown. In my very first video about Usana, I hinted at Audino being in the Usana region as your dad has one as his partner Pokemon. I put some thought to it and decided Audino deserved a pre-evo, same as all the others that got one after the fact. So I set to designing Audini. Audino is known as the hearing Pokemon, and a lot of emphasis is put on Audino's ears, so I wanted to make sure in my design I really made the ears the focus. I looked at the shape of Audino's ears and thought they would translate really well into a bow shape, so that's what I did. Everything else is just Audino, but mini, hence the name. The colors are a more saturated Audino. I chose to go with a more saturated look because Mega Audino is much lighter. Same for the shiny. For the abilities, I decided to go with the same abilities, Healer and Regenerator, and the hidden ability is Klutz. The stats are just a babyfied version of Audino's, and that's my take on a pre-evo for Audino. It's always a bit scary trying to design or redesign original Pokemon from Game Freak, but I'm super happy with the ones in this video. I want to know your thoughts though, so let me know in the comments below. Like them, hate them, are they on the team? Since Usana has two different routes, rural and urban, in some areas only one will be available. Route 2 is a small stretch of urban road leading between two towns that are close to each other. It was one of the first routes in Usana to get paved, and because of these factors, it's the only route here. Route 3 technically has both an urban and rural route, but since I went urban for Route 2, I'll be adding primarily rural Pokemon to Route 3. This helps keep the region in balance. So the first Route 3 Pokemon I'd like to introduce today is my region's Pika clone. Every new region has to have its own Pika clone, and it's become one of the things we can look forward to as new games come out. So of course, I had to have my very own Usana Pika clone. This is Keru, the wildfire Pokemon. So I gotta say, I think I really captured the Pika clone vibe, and this would be a great mascot for the Usana region. When it came to the name, I had come up with a few options and asked some fellow Fakemon artists which name they liked more, and Keru won in a landslide. So the inspiration is pretty silly, but it's partially inspired by Lightning McQueen Kerchow meme, and Chew, which is the Japanese word for a sound a mouse makes. And also Kerchew is a sneeze sound. I went with electric fire type since it's one of the unused type combos for Pika clones, and it was a big part of the design process. So when it came to choosing what animal I would use for my Pika clone, I really wanted to do a jerboa, also known as a kangaroo rat. Though not the most common, there are many species found all across Midwest America, Texas, and California. So it's the perfect candidate for the Usanan Pika clone. I wanted to make sure I included certain iconic jerboa features like their large ears, long legs, and feet, and tail that ends in a tuft. The tail in particular was a perfect way to include the fire typing, so I made it a lit fuse. The color palette, I looked at electric and fire type Pokemon and found my favorite combination of that. In the shiny, I just went with my Muse, and I'm honestly really happy with the results. For the ability, I went with static since it's a Pika clone standard, a lot tend to have it. And for the hidden ability, I yet again added a new ability. I call it Full Charge, and it's pretty potent. A Pokemon with full charge for their ability uses the speed stat instead of the attack stat for their attacks, which leads me to the stats. It's pretty special defensive, but that speed. It's pretty dang fast, which is because Keru are so full of energy, and they spend most of their time running. The extra energy is released in sparks, igniting their tail and unfortunately causing wildfires. The dust they kick up can give Keru a sneezing fit, hence the sneeze part of the name. And that's my take on a Pika clone. I hope you guys like Keru, and you can show him some love by hitting that like button. Or leave a comment saying Keru. The awesome Pokemon doesn't stop there, so let's meet the final Evo line for Route 3 and my Roselia archetype Pokemon. This is Baderi, the wildflower Pokemon. The name is a combination of bud and prairie because the inspiration of this line is found all across the prairies and is known as prairie fire due to its abundance and red color. It's of course grass type because it's essentially a pretty parasitic weed. When I first started coming up with the Usana region, I knew I wanted to have a simple 3-stage early root grass Pokemon. There's a lot of amazing plants and flowers to choose from, but prairie fire, also known as Indian paintbrush, happens to be the favorite flower of a few people who are important to me. So I decided to immortalize my appreciation. I'd use it as my main source of inspiration. For the first stage, I didn't want the full flower to be in view, and I really wanted to have these long drooping leaves. Overall, my main goal was just keeping it really cute. The colors are typical Indian paintbrush colors, red and green, and yes, the shiny is pretty subtle, but it gets better as it evolves, I promise. Look, I like the occasional hard-to-tell shiny, makes them feel like I really earned it when I get one. For the abilities, I went with Natural Cure and Adaptability. For the hidden ability, Serene Grace. For the stats, I went with a generally fair spread, being a little more special-oriented, but only slightly. Baderi are playful and absent-minded, choosing to bounce from place to place, spreading far and wide across the plains of Usana. They don't seem to be the best for the ecosystems that they are part of, since they quickly get to problematic numbers. Thankfully, they are so cute they are caught often mitigating their environmental impact. Since this is a Badoo archetype, it's gotta evolve, so let's check out the next evolution. This is Roora. The name is a combination of the Spanish word for red, roja, and flora. Ironically, Laura is Spanish for someone who's very chatty, but this Pokemon surely wouldn't have that problem. Roselia is such an iconic design and is probably one of my favorite grass-type Pokemon, so I wanted to make sure that Roora was just as cute and iconic. I feel like I accomplished my goals, but really, I just hope you guys like it. The leaves are pulled up, covering most of Roorora's face, but they have one eye peeking out. The top of the head is more exposed, showing the pretty red flowers. The color palette is very similar to the first evolution, with the coattail leaves being a yellowy green. Kinda like they have grown up out of old leaves, since that's similar to how Indian paintbrushes grow. The shiny is a lovely purple. See? I told you it would get better. I made the shiny purple because Indian paintbrushes come in a variety of colors, one of which is this amazing shade of purple. I went with the same abilities, and the stats are special and speed-oriented. Because Baderi are caught so often, wild Roora tend to shy away from heavily populated areas, choosing wide-open plains and rural places to spend their days. They love taking in the sunshine, being less active on rainy days. And that's Roora. But of course, we got one last evolution and the final Pokemon in today's video. Roselia evolves into Roserade by giving it a shiny stone, so of course my Pokemon will have to evolve via stone as well. For this, I decided to go with the Sunstone. Just sort of felt thematic, and that's about it. So after giving Roora a Sunstone, it will evolve into Florant. The name Florant is a combination of Flora and Flaunt. I went with Flaunt because it means to display with intent to cause jealousy or admiration. Since they are so sought after, I figured I could lean into that vibe. So when I was designing Florant, I knew I wanted the red flowers on the top of the head to be like a really big hairstyle, since big hair is a common style used in many cultures to be more desirable. The coattail leaves have been expanded to be longer, and the overall design looks kinda like a high-collared jumpsuit. The colors are the same for the regular, and the shiny of course is yet a different color. This time I went with blue. As I said before, since they come in a variety of colors, I thought using the shinies would be a fun and pretty much unique way of showing some of those colors off. So we'll go from pink to purple to blue, purple being a blend of pink and blue. So that's why it's the middle stage. I kept the same abilities since there's no reason to change them. I figured ability changes are reserved for Pokemon that go through a significant amount of change in type and design, so I won't often change them as Pokemon evolve. For the stats, I decided to really lean into the special attack, keeping a decent speed and special defense. Florant stays grass type all the way through, unlike Roselia, because I wanted to keep it simple for early root purposes, and because I didn't want to make it fire or poison type, the other two that came to mind first, and fairy type didn't quite fit either. Florant are very proud of the large flowers atop their head. Because they have been so sought after, they have grown to have a bit of an ego, proudly parading around small towns and other rural areas waiting for someone to catch them. Many trainers who have a penchant for gardening will participate in contests to see who has the best Florant in the county. And that's the final Route 3 Pokemon. I promised to introduce the first gym leader, so without further ado, and that concludes the third video in the Usana region. If you're still here, thanks so much for watching to the end of the video. I'm really happy with how the Usana region is shaping out, and I'm super excited to continue Alex's journey through the Usana region. This video was especially difficult to make. There was so much to draw, so that's why I kept the Pokemon to my minimum of 7. But I figured with the Pokemon from routes 1, 2, and 3 and the returning Pokemon, we should still have a good selection to choose from. This video is already pretty long, so I won't go into the next video in Usana, but I will briefly mention that my next video is the May I Draw Your Fakemon challenge, and I've already been flooded with submissions. For everyone who has made submissions, thank you. Not only was it fun drawing your cool Fakemon ideas, but I'm honored you would give me the opportunity. I'm still taking submissions and will finalize which Pokemon will get featured soon, so it's not too late. The final number was going to be 8, but I may end up just making a longer video and doing more, so don't miss out. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That's all for now. Until next time.